Members of council, please come to the council chambers.
Members of council, if you're participating online, could you please turn on your camera so we can count you for quorum, please, if you can hear this?
Members of council, this meeting is now resumed. We'll go to the item that we were dealing with. Okay, let's do quick releases because there's only one more speaker on the other item and then we can vote on it. So quick releases, who has quick releases? Is Councillor Myers' motion ready? Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Myers. He held down EX 20.9 and EX 20.10. So Councillor Myers, what is your motion?
So on EX 20.9, it's to delete recommendation 8 and to replace it with the one that's going to be on the screen. And it basically says that the the city is to work with the TTC in coming up with an agreed upon list of transit priorities for the Canada Transit Permanent Funding. And it reaffirms that the Eglinton East LRT is a priority. Pardon?
This is not a quick item.
No. Sure. Yeah, okay.
So it's not a quick release. Councillor Perks, because I think councillors have questions to staff. Councillor Perks.
Speaker, I can release PH 18.12, Transit-Oriented Communities Update on Downtown Proposals and Affordable Housing. Councillor Malik has a motion on it, and with her motion, we can then just vote and go.
Okay, because it's here without a recommendation. So Councillor Matlow, you have a motion?
Malik.
Oh, sorry. Deputy Mayor Malik. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a motion. It is consistent with the direction that we have given at council for every opportunity that we can to build and further affordable rental and housing. And that includes in transit-oriented communities and the Ontario line, and that's what this motion lays out clearly.
Okay, so on the motion by Deputy Mayor Malik, on favor, carried.
Thank you.
Did you have two motions? No, hold on. Deputy Mayor Malik, do you have two motions? Yes, you do.
Yes. Yeah. My apologies. I thought they were put together. Yes. And this is the second motion along the same lines.
Okay, so that's motion 1B. All in favor on the amendment? Okay, item is amended. On favor, carried.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Carroll.
I got my question answered. So Councillor Myers still wants to release that item. I'm crystal clear now.
Well, does anybody else have questions on the item?
They shouldn't have. Crystal clear.
All right, so, okay, Councillor Myers, we'll try you again.
Thank you. So for EX 20.10, delete recommendation 4 and replace it with the item. And for EX 20.9, delete recommendation 8 and replace it with the motion.
Okay, so does everyone know what we're voting on? Yes. Okay. On EX 20.9, the motion was on the screen. On favor? Carried. On EX 20.10? Okay, we'll get the motion up. It's there. Okay. Okay, on EX 20.9 as amended, on favor, carried. Now we'll go to EX 20.10. There's the 10. On the amendment, on favor, carried. Item is amended, on favor, carried. Okay, the item is complete. Councillor Carroll, did you have a quick item?
No, I just wanted to flag it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's... So we'll go back to Moss Park, if we can put it on the screen. Yeah. Councillor Fletcher, can you just come and take the chair, because I just want to say a few words. Okay, thank you. And the reason I want to, Councillor Prusa, please, quiet. I'm speaking. So the reason I want to say something is because
I'm all ears. Councillor Prusa, could you please let the speaker have her 5 minutes? Thank you so much.
I won't even take 5 minutes. The only reason I want to say something is that I sit on a board of management in my ward as well, which is George Bell Arena. Now, all councillors at the beginning of the term are appointed to be on the boards. And I attend 90% of the board meetings at George Bell because I get invited. I can't attend all of them. But, you know, when it comes to, as far as the maintenance of the arena and that, and I mean, I work very well with the board, and is that, you know, it's the staff that we have at the arena that's responsible for the maintenance and that. And so if there's a problem, then the local council should bring it to the attention of the city and say that there's an issue with this arena. And, you know, and as far as, you know, doing fundraising and that, I know my arena board, they're very active, and I've been helping them a lot on doing fundraising. But what I have been doing as well is that they're working, they want to have a second pad at their arena. And so all the developments that are happening in that area, I'm trying to allocate through development and through the community benefits, is to the community benefits to go towards this arena to help them build a new pad. So everybody's on course in that, and we're all working together. And I think that should happen to all the boards. So I don't know what's happened at Moss Park, because I don't know, I've never been there. But, you know, I think it's important. The councillor work with the city if there are issues, but, you know, I think that the board has a responsibility, but as well as the city has a responsibility to the arenas, to maintain the arena. I know that we're just doing a lot of renovations in my arena. We're closing the arena actually for a year because they're doing major capital work at the arena. And so, yeah, and so I just wanted to mention that, you know, I don't know how the other boards are operating, Board of Management, but I know the one I have in my ward, and Councillor Holiday, you're very familiar with that, because I believe that you've been there for, you know, you've been there through the arena playing hockey, and some of your constituents actually come to the arena. And we also use the arena and that's what I think is really important for all our arenas, is that rather than just have an arena where people are skating, having hockey, and having ice rink, that it should be used, you know, all year round. And in the summer, when you don't have the ice, bring some programming into the arena, making use of the space that you have there that the community could use, right? And I think that's important for all our arenas, not just the Board of Management, but also our city arenas. I'm trying to do this at Weston Arena in my ward as well. So I just want to make those comments that, you know, it's important that we work with the board. And if there's any issues, if I've ever had an issue with George Bell, gone directly to staff, and the issues have been resolved. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Speaker. Councillor Perruzza wishes to have his time.
Well, Speaker, maybe I can provide a different perspective slightly. A perspective that suggests that I don't have a board of management in any of my arenas, right? Because I don't know, I guess the arenas there in West End, North York were built at a time when the city was building the arenas, and then it decided, well, you know what? We built an arena, we got this park, let's run it as a city. Let's hire some staff, let's bring in some programming, and let's maintain and manage the arena. And I, for one, when I first got here, I thought that pretty much, you know, as a young guy, I was a young guy, for sure, and I thought, you know, pretty much that's the way it's done across the city, right? Like north, south, east, west. And then I discovered, well, no, that's not quite the case, because some of these places were built at a time when, you know, cities and city councils and so on decided that they were going to allow a group of local folks basically, you know, run the arena through a board in a form of management, because the board gets to make a number of decisions related to the arena, related to programming, related to some staff, and all those kinds of things. And so we've got this hybrid model. And I remember a number of years ago here, the staff, our park staff, brought in a report that basically said, you know what, we really should bring all these places in-house and have some sense of uniformity, some level of uniformity across the city in terms of how we manage our parks, our boards, our parks, our arenas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember the then conversation here on the floor of council. We were a much bigger council back then. When I remember that conversation taking place, there were like, I don't know, 44 or 45 folks. And I remember some people were really sort of wedded to the boards. I got that, because you got a group of local folks on your board doing something, and you as a politician, you don't want to necessarily run afoul of that. I get that, and I understand that. And I remember the the arena boards, a lot of them sort of at the year end. And one of the reasons why the staff said to us, you know what, maybe we should bring this into some kind of conformity and uniformity, was because a lot of the arenas back then, and I don't know the state of them today, I haven't checked their budgets recently, but many of them were not coming in in a positive sort of position financially, and we're having to kind of bail them out, 300, 400, 700, 800 K, 1,000, and I get that. So they were making decisions locally. They're running these places as kind of like their own place. Yes, the city lays out some very general policy kind of directions for folks and expects the arena boards to basically see the city as the payer of sorts, and then kind of follow our general direction in terms of how they're going to manage the ship per se. Now, I understand that Councillor Moyes has one of these arena boards, and he would like to see something different there, or not. I don't know in this particular instance, but I'm not adverse to that. I'm not adverse to the notion of, you know what, maybe these places should be part of the city the operations. We have the very capable staff. They're running, I don't know what the percentage is, let's say 90 or 95% of the arenas across the city, and others, and maybe we should include the other 4 or 5 and eliminate this conversation, which, for example, which we have had now a number of times here on the floor, Council. I know it's hard to do. I know it's hard to do politically. I get that. Because of the influence of the boards locally, influence of the
5 seconds.
of these boards. Oh, and I wasn't even going to take up 3 minutes. I'm already at 5.
Yeah,
well, I'll end it there. Sure. I'll
okay,
do that.
thank
Yeah.
you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm here as somebody who has no arenas, whether it's an arena board or directly operated, nothing, zero, zilch. Whether they're a board of management or directly operated. But every single arena is a city asset. It may be managed differently, just like our AOCs. We have 11 of those. They came in from the old city of Toronto. I'm just on the website. All these arenas came in from the old borough of East York or the old city of Toronto, and under the City of Toronto Act, they're all codified as being bona fide as part of our structure. They are just like our AOCs. We have 11, and then we have however many community centers we have. We have boards of management for our AOCs. And then we have no boards of management. We have directly operated community centers. They're quite different. They each bring something different. And yes, we get to appoint all of the members, but yes, there's a process for that. You apply, particularly in the Board of Management for arenas, you apply to the clerks, and then you're vetted, and then names are brought forward, and community councils bring them forward. And Toronto and East York puts the members on. I guess York used to have an arena as well, Councillor Nunziata. That's why it came in with the codified under the City of Toronto Act. And the same with the AOCs, except that's a community process where you name your board, and then you name the chair of that board. So we have these, I don't want to call them outliers, I have them a very deep community process that existed in other parts of the city. I'll just give you a difference. In the East York Arena, they have a snack bar that they operate. Councillor Davis, when she was here, the city said, you can't operate a snack bar, you have to operate it like this, you have to do this and that. She fought that to the ground. They're still operating that little snack bar to raise money for their arena. The East York Hockey Association has a little room. They actually have the little Stanley Cup in East York. It's the only Stanley Cup that's been authorized by the Stanley Cup, by the NHL, to be in existence. They have that in their little room. These are also community-based, community-run arenas, just like our AOX. The that's at the Ted Reeve Arena. They have the little Stanley Cup because Councillor Bradford and I, we go out and we give them that cup out every year. Councillor Nunziata the speaker talks about building a new pad. They want to build the new pad. Well, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars. The city will build the new pad. The Lakeshore Arena, I can't remember how much money we put on there or what our line of credit still is with them. It's multi-millions of dollars. We had to rescue that arena board and put it under an arena board when it was the Lions. And anybody from Etobicoke knows that. So we had a big fight with the arenas around ice time. Who's giving ice time? Are women getting ice time? Is everybody getting ice time? That was a number of years ago. There's these deep discussions because there's not enough arenas, there's not enough ice, there's not enough ice time for a sport that everybody simply loves. But in speaking with hearing from Mr. Dayton, unlike the AOX, which have somebody sitting in SDFA that they all connect with, that doesn't exist in parks for the arena boards. That should be changed immediately, not just for Moss Park, but for all arena boards. You have to have a point of contact in order to make sure that they're being run well, they're being kept up, and there's a process if things aren't going well. And I don't think it's here on the floor of council. I want to say that. I don't think it's here for council to be giving that kind of direction. I think if things don't work out with staff, I mean our city staff, then you can bring it here if you need to correct things. But I think a line got crossed here, and I'm glad Councillor Moyes withdrew that motion because it should never have been here on the floor of this council identifying all those people. So that's tainted even this discussion that we're having here tonight. Yes, let the city manager look at the governance, but maybe you should be looking at that for all arena boards because right away, you should have that person in the Parks Department that's in contact with every single arena manager to make sure they're meeting the city standards, that the board's working well. That's the job of the city. But it's not to it's not to actually directly manage because we've turned that over. And our report from Mr. Dayton shows that it's far more expensive to directly manage this. Far more expensive to turn it over to that model. So there's no recommendation in the report to go to directly operated. So here we are with the situation that this one board has been singled out. I'd ask the city manager if this passes to make sure that everybody feels that they're a city asset, we've got a certain set of standards, and everybody's living up to that.
Thank you. Okay, so on the item,
Recorded vote.
recorded vote.
The item is adopted. The vote is 13-5.
That's done. Our next item is EX 20.11, Renew Golden Mile Environmental Assessment, Councillor Candavel. Yeah, it's going to be dealt with the PH 18.2 that Councillor Perks held down. So Councillor Candavel, do you have questions or what?
Yeah, just a few.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to staff for waiting this long. Of course, this item is very consequential and impacting my ward significantly, albeit the impacts we'll see 5-10 years from now. And to be efficient with time, just get to a few core questions that my community is concerned about. Primarily, why is staff recommending an option where there is only one motor vehicle lane going each way in the proposed O'Connor extension?
Well, Madam Speaker, we've done some pretty significant analysis about the entire network in the area, and this particular extension of O'Connor is a new road, and so it would be responsive to the new conditions of the neighborhood that will be in place over, as Councillor mentioned, over the next 5 to 10 to even longer time frame. And so we've assessed it, and we've identified that as a road serving the local developments that are coming into play. The biggest issue that we need to address in terms of capacity and throughput of the roadway is to make sure that we have enough capacity at the intersections to handle the traffic, and we can do that with one lane in each direction, widening out to multiple lanes at the intersection, and then having public realm improvements as well. So that's why we recommended that.
Thank you. And I guess to dig a bit deeper, there was an option for 2 motor vehicle lanes each way. Many in the community feel that was the obvious and better choice. Why did staff not pick that?
Through the Speaker, there was two segments of O'Connor Drive. So there was a segment that went to Pharmacy, and then there was a segment that went to Pharmacy over to Birchmount. There was no 4-lane alternative that was initially studied east of Pharmacy Avenue over to Birchmount. The traffic modeling that had been undertaken was indicating that we didn't need a 4-vehicular lane option.
Right. So the decision was predicated on traffic modeling? Is that the primary driver? No pun intended.
Through the Speaker, that was an input into the development of the alternatives.
Okay. And how wide is the right-of-way for O'Connor?
Through the Speaker, 27 meters.
And how wide, because I think there are different alternatives, and in the current one that's being proposed, how wide is the protected bike lane?
Through the Speaker, I believe 2.1 meters, which is the city's guidelines.
Gotcha. So from Vic Park to Pharmacy, there was an option, and for clarity, staff did not consider an option going east of Pharmacy that would have 2 vehicle lanes each?
Through the Speaker, Councillor, that's correct, and we did bring a report forward to Infrastructure and Environment Committee as an interim report to solidify the direction from City Council and that committee on what option would be taken forward to public consultation. So that interim report was directive to the options that we would be bringing forward to the public through the municipal Class CA process.
Thank you. And I think community is, recognizes this is a multi-year project. What is, and I'll speak to my motion later on, but what are the factors that would allow us to review this decision as we approach creation of the extension?
Thanks for that question. So there are a couple of things that were set in the secondary plan, and that's the right-of-way width of 27 meters. And then, as we indicated, the options that were reviewed were set through the interim report that was before Council in June. But what triggers There are triggers within the secondary plan monitoring policies that would have us look at if there are any changes to the infrastructure that's needed to support traffic volumes or other infrastructure that's accounted for in the secondary plan monitoring plan process. And so should the monitoring, as triggered by the development applications that come to pass, should that monitoring assessment indicate that more lanes are needed than what was designed, then the road would need to be redesigned as part of the environmental assessment process that would be in place at that time. So there are triggers in place approved by the secondary plan process that's in effect that would stipulate that that change could be considered.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Can you refresh my memory? Because, you know, I was in on the early days of this. But we do have extensions here. We do have some rerouting of roads here. But they're not meant to carry big loads, are they? These are not being built as extensions because you need additional highway.
That's a great point. So the Golden Mile is predicated on the Eglinton Connects being a major transit corridor for this area, but also that we need some additional network capacity, roads to serve development. But those roads need to be pedestrian scale because that's the vision of Golden Mile, that we're creating a community that has live, work options and is pedestrian scale in nature. So it will certainly serve the development needs, but it's not intended to be major throughputs. It's not intended to carry traffic off of other arterials.
We're not creating ring roads here. We don't want to lose the neighborhood that these extensions
Ring roads is exactly how we would refer to it, yes.
Yeah, and so you could end up with an unintended ring road if you were to widen the roads. What you want is you're simply creating additional parcels here and there. These extensions allow you to add in the density in ways that still leaves us with little neighborhoods. It's just a rerouting of the roads.
Additional network capacity and connectivity for all modes, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Candeval to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if the motion can be shared, worked with staff to provide a mechanism for this to be reviewed in light of changing factors. I'd like to say a few things. This is not a reflection on staff. I think staff has been professional in their approach to this, but it does speak to a theme that we saw a couple of times today. There is a disconnect between how community understands our process, our decision, and in this case, for those familiar with the Golden Mile, and I hope everyone read the articles in the Toronto Star over December, speak to a lot of concern and a lot of gaps in this massive project. Because if you drive in Scarborough along Eglinton from Vic Park going east, any weekday evening, any weekend, there is a considerable amount of traffic and congestion. So the argument we broadly apply that folks will move to the crosstown, it's very hard for residents to fathom and accept, given we're seeing 50 to 75 high-rises coming along a community, neighborhoods that are predominantly family-based, where communities and families rely on the automobile. So for us, at face value, to say that one motor vehicle lane each way on the O'Connor extension, and the irony being west of Vic Park, the O'Connor Road is 2 lanes each. So we're going into a highly projected dense area and reducing it to 1 lane. A lot of folks in the Clearly community and south of it have trouble digesting this recommendation that we're bringing forward. And it speaks to the theme that many have expressed to me in different quarters and areas, that decisions are being made for Scarborough or for certain neighborhoods in Scarborough by people who don't live there. And I think that is a fundamental thing, that though we feel and support professional advice, that we need to recognize this disparity in how decisions are made and the heart of our governance. And I think that's something for us to reflect on, this disconnect, because people are I'll be frank, flabbergasted that the recommendation we're going forward for their neighborhoods is that we're going with 1 lane each when people see the existing traffic, the projected congestion and traffic coming from these developments along Golden Mile. So I see consternation, but I think it's important that we hear the voice from the community. And this is obviously my community, and they have concerns about this. So I appreciate the work that we're looking to do vis-a-vis this motion that will allow us the ability to review in the scenario that some predict that with the density, with the tens of thousands of new folks who come in, the usage and reliance of the automobile for families will continue, and we're going to see further congestion in the roads being proposed north of Eglinton and, of course, south with the O'Connor extension. So what I'm looking to get at is that I think we need to continue a nuanced, critical approach to how we make decisions. In the article in the Star, it spoke to mistakes that as a body we have made with other areas of density that didn't address the infrastructure needs that are required. So I think we need to be reflective on the culture that we set in here, that we're open-minded to different perspectives, different ideas, and different thoughts and lived experiences. So that's really the purpose of my comments tonight, is to help shed some light on how we do business, how do we interpret knowledge, what do we accept as fact, as experience, as theory, and as advice or recommendation. So this obviously is ongoing. There's a number of factors we're seeing with the Golden Mile, with the recent decisions on the OPAs, with regeneration, and even potentially more development. But I think as we approach this conversation, whether it's economic and community development, transit, transportation, roads, and housing, that we think we should always be aware that we may not have all the answers. And we're dealing with incredibly complex, intertwined, and sensitive decisions that impact the real lives of real people who are not in this room. So I want to end on that commentary, because the decisions we make in this area of Scarborough, in this area of our city, will be long-lasting, far-reaching, with considerable implications, because what I fear is that these decisions are now taken out of context, polarized by some voices to say, hey, here's City Hall, who doesn't get the lived reality.
5 seconds.
The lived reality of people on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, you have a question. 3 minutes, clarification of the motion.
Oh, Speaker, I was trying to get on the speaker's list, not to question the councillor. I'd like to get on the speaker list. That's what I thought I was doing. So let me remove myself from the questioning, but
Councillor
I wish
Thompson,
to speak.
Councillor
Yes.
Thompson, you are on the speaker's list, but you're
Okay,
also
I
on
don't
the
wish to question.
list. You want
No,
me to take
thank
your
you.
name off?
Please, Speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Carroll, question, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Just very quickly, I just want to clarify, are you in fact saying that the planner on a project has to live in the neighborhood?
No, not at all. I'm relaying.
That's why I'm trying to clarify.
I'm relaying. I thought I was clear. I'm relaying the voices of my community that I feel compelled to share. And I was very particular and precise that, broadly speaking, I've heard from a number of quarters in my ward and across Scarborough that decisions are being made for Scarborough by people who don't live in Scarborough. That was what I said. I was not speaking, as you've implied, specifically on this decision.
So I just want to clarify, who are we talking about when we say decisions are being made?
Who are we talking about? About decisions being made?
Talking about me?
We're talking about decisions being made in this chamber that affect people.
So are you saying that you're going to recuse yourself from any vote that's not in Scarborough? And we should all recuse ourselves if we're talking about something
That's
that's in
not what I
Scarborough?
said, Councillor Carroll.
I'm just trying to clarify.
I thought I clarified. I'll clarify again if you allow me. My comments was relaying feelings and experiences by people in my ward and across Scarborough that this is the reality of decision-making in as they experience it in their community.
So to clarify, have you explained to them that the purpose of having a council chamber with 25 duly elected representatives in it who have sworn an oath is that on projects with the enormity of something like the Golden Mile project, that they put a citywide lens on it, they bring to it all of the lessons learned in all of the similarly large projects. They listen carefully to the local councillors and the Scarborough Community Council, and then they make a decision as a city council. Has that been explained to them?
Of course, I don't think that needs to be explained. A, it was, but also B, they understand the operations and dynamics of governance, that we're making decisions for the entire city. And I find that actually condescending, to be frank, that needs to be asked if that was explained. So if your concern is people have an opinion about this city chamber, about the city council and the chamber, I think that's problematic. People have the right to have an opinion about this chamber.
Just wanted to clarify whether or not we had a problem with council or a problem with professional planners or all of the above. And
Okay.
it wasn't clear in the remarks.
That was your last
unfortunate.
question. That's your last question.
Jeez.
Okay, Councillor Holiday, 3 minutes clarification of the motion.
Councillor Candeval, I just wanted to follow up on the line of questions because I've heard similar things, but would I understand your remarks and at the heart of your motion, a recognition that local councillors and the community have specific wisdom about decisions that may be different from the lens that city councillors across the city apply?
Sorry, I didn't hear. I thought you kept going. Could you repeat that, Councillor Holiday? Sorry.
At the heart of that, is there a recognition that the local councillor and the local community brings certain wisdoms and perspectives to decisions that are different than the lens that a city council with broad representation across the city brings?
Exactly, and I didn't speak to it in depth, but I alluded to staff have been professional, and they certainly heard and allowed my voice to be heard at the community consultation and in one-on-one meetings about this issue. So I think that space was there for me as a local councillor, but I think this is will always be an existential tension between the purview of an individual councillor and the citywide interests, right? But my intentions were to bring the voice of community, which they obviously and certainly didn't agree with this decision. I do think there should perhaps be more I guess consideration from the local councillors, but there's a lot of factors in play that involve technical, professional pieces, and of course a timeline that precedes me from becoming councillor.
Let's leave the technical and the reporting aside. Mm-hmm. Through your motion and through your remarks, are you not telling council that there is a tension in this and other decisions because of this aspect? And are you not highlighting that this is a matter about how the community feels about government?
Yes, exactly. That's that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Thompson to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to thank the staff for preparing these reports. This goes back quite some time, and I have been there since day one. I've seen all the meetings that have taken place, which were numerous. I don't have an actual count in front of me, but they were held to the south, to the east, to the west, to the north. I want to thank the leadership of Emily Caldwell, who's a planner, Jacqueline Hayward, and of course, our esteemed General Manager for Transportation, Barbara Gray, and her team. And there are many others, actually, that I have met with over the years, actually, dealing with the Golden Mile, particularly as it related to the new street, the construction and the formation of the streets. And you are dealing with the report now, the EA, and this is a final report. Speaker, so much effort, so much time have been taken with the community, with respect to the landowners and every stakeholder who had an interest in being involved with respect to input with the design of the roadway. And yes, not everybody's happy. We get that. Some would like to have 4 lanes and so on. We also are reminded of the fact that whenever it does come through, the crosstown will be a major transportation asset in the community. Most of the development that's taking place in the Golden Mile is on the north side. It's in Ward 21, which is my ward. We have spent so much time with our professional staff dealing with the density, dealing with the configuration of roadway and providing input. We have aligned ourselves with what was, in fact, and determined to be the best design and the best interest based on the input from the community. I have no member of my community who've reached out to me who have suggested that foreign elements of staff, professional staff, are in fact making decisions that are inconsistent with respect to the desire and the wish of the community, the improvement of the Golden Mile. And while I may not live to see it fully, realize, because it's going to take some time down the road, the decisions that we're making here today are in fact intended to facilitate the community's ability to traverse, whether or not it's by foot, vehicle, bicycle, or whatever modes of transportation. Speaker and members of council, I can tell you that the staff, and I don't know how many meetings I've had, but there have been numerous during COVID, prior to COVID, after COVID, on the alignment, on the discussion. And so I simply want to have council realize that some of what you're hearing today, not sure where it's coming from or who's making these comments, but having been there at the outset, having been to many of the meetings, in fact, pretty well all the meetings, both on the north side and the south side, that were materially beneficial to the exercise of input, I can tell you that the staff had done an amazing job. Their professionalism, whether or not they live in the community or not, should not be questioned. In fact, I think we should celebrate them because they have done a remarkable job. We have met with the landowners and staff, and they have met with me who at some points they were not happy with respect to the alignment. We've gone back, we've had discussions, we've, drilled through all of the elements. And what you have here today in front of us are good reports, good alignment with respect to the community interests that I represent, and the fact that our staff have listened. You've given them the authority to make decisions. They have come back with some solid recommendations. And I'm going to ask Speaker for a recorded vote on these items. And I want to tell the staff how amazing they have been with the amount of time and input and the ability to listen. I say bravo and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's put the motion ready to vote. Yeah. EX 2020.11, we have the amendment by Councillor Candeval, recorded vote. This is the motion from Councillor Candeval.
Deputy Mayor Malik, please. And Councillor Fletcher, please. The amendment carries. The vote is 15-5.
Item is amended. On favor?
Recorded vote,
Recorded.
Speaker.
Councillor Cheng, are you present in the meeting?
Councillor Cheng is not here. If she doesn't have her camera on, she's not here.
Speaker, my camera was on when I voted.
Members, would you please leave your cameras on until the results of the vote is announced, please?
Okay.
Councillor Burnside, are you present? Thank you. The item is amended, carries. The vote is 17-3.
So Councillor Perkson, do you want to release your item PH 18.2? Okay. So on PH 18.2, Councillor Perks is releasing. On favor? Carried. All right. So our next item is EX 20.12, reducing stormwater runoff. Councillor Candeval, you held the item down. Do you have questions to staff?
I'm willing to release it, and I think Councillor Chernos-Lynn has a motion.
Well, if she does, she has to put her name on the screen. Councillor Chernis?
I also had questions.
Okay, just a sec. Councillor Candeval, you held the item down. So what are you doing? Are you speaking? Are you?
Questions, but I just want to let you know there's a motion.
Okay, so no questions.
No, I do have a question.
Okay, then ask your question. We're at the.
Motions, okay. To staff.
No, we're at questions right now.
Yes,
Okay, you have questions.
I'm trying to ask.
Okay, so you held the item down, so questions.
Through you, Madam Speaker, to staff, I know there's been some concern from industry partners, a couple of which are in my ward and have expressed their concern, what they feel is an inequity. Can staff speak to that?
Speaker, Toronto Water staff and economic development staff have been working with the Toronto Industry Network, who represent a number of large water users, manufacturers within the city, and we've been consulting with them for pretty close to 20 years, at least 19 years that I know. I've been discussing with them on some of the issues of the growing capital program to the stormwater program that we have and the way we charge for it. So it's been subject to a number of staff reports, and we've been reporting back, but we have not addressed all of their concerns over the years.
I agree, and it's been a learning curve for some of us. Is there validity to that claim of inequity? And I recognize there's implications on smaller and individual ratepayers.
Speaker, inequity is the term they use.
Yeah.
What I would say is that there is no perfect system to charge for various uses. We try to come up with a user rate.
Okay, come on.
reflective
It's too
of
noisy
the-
in here. Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Carroll, please. Go ahead.
So we try to come up with a user rate that is reflective of the level of service you're getting, the type of service you're getting, and then the charge that we have. The system that we put in place and that occurred around amalgamation is we put together drinking water, sanitary, and storm all together under Toronto Water. But the way we generate our revenue essentially is through what passes through the meter. So the drinking water use is how we calculate our revenue. Stormwater is what falls out of the sky and what runs off of properties. We do maintain that infrastructure, but the capital program is unrelated to how much you consume going through a meter.
Thank you. And last question, and I know tonight is not the place to give any sort of major change in direction, but is staff committed to continue to meet with members of TIN and the organization to address and continue that dialogue?
Speaker, we always work together with TIN and economic development staff. We talk about a number of different issues beyond just the rates. We talk about sewer bylaw and administrative improvements. So we always welcome the opportunity to meet with TIN, and quite happy to set up regular meetings with our staff to make ourselves aware of any other concerns and move forward on other initiatives. This particular one, we were reporting back to this council based on a recommendation from 2021. And what we're doing is requesting council to close out that request to report back. And that's what you see in those recommendations. And I'm aware that TIN had some concerns with ending that review.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou.
Questions?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for Toronto Water. Did this report take into consideration the significant impact of new development on stormwater management, in particular as it relates to minor variance applications and iceberg houses?
Speaker, not specifically that issue, but though we have been involved in looking at the impact of some of the decisions being made through minor variances and iceberg homes in particular. One of the things that we did do in Toronto Water is we implemented a new policy in 2022, which deals with groundwater and the management of groundwater and foundation drains, where we won't accept that water into the city sewer systems, and you have to manage that as part of your rebuild and keep it out of our sewer. So that was in direct response to what we were seeing with not just iceberg type homes, but also very large developments that are building very deep parking lots.
Okay, thank you. And has Toronto Water ever done training for Committee of Adjustment panel members on how lot coverage, hard landscaping, and other variances impact stormwater management?
Speaker, no, we have not. That's something that we quite happy put together for them as a presentation discussing the impacts. I do know some of the challenges we face is minor variances with reverse slope driveways, for example. It's something that the city no longer accepts in a general application. However, we do see some get approved through Committee of Adjustment, and we put in place a mechanism where those individuals have to sign an agreement with Toronto Water acknowledging that this is something we did not recommend and they understand the risks. So we're quite happy to present or provide them with a presentation of the impacts of some of the decisions.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to the subsidies that are outlined in this report, I feel like I'm going to have some questions from residents coming when this comes through, wondering whether they can apply for subsidies proposed in this report retroactively, or is this just applying to new projects?
Speaker, no, in fact, part of the work that we did in the consultation was not only looking at go forward or those homes that haven't yet done any work. It was meeting with and talking to a number of homeowners that have done some work in the past, and even in communities where we may have done some basement flooding work and the homeowner had done some work. So the recommendations of amendments and enhancements to our subsidy program took into account that opportunity for people that have accessed the program in the past. They can reapply for certain components. That is part of the reason why we need to report back later this year, because we're going to have to report on the logistics. What kind of communication program? What resources do we need? How much money do I need to allocate? So lots of work to do to explain it, but absolutely it will include those people that participated in the past.
Okay, thank you so much. That's it for me on questions.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. DiGeronimo, can we say officially it was over a 100-year storm times 2 this summer, at least out in the West End where I live?
Speaker, yes. Within the western part of our city, and it did go into Peel region as well, there were 2 separate storms. And in those areas, we have records showing that it exceeded the 100-year storm level twice.
The numbers I have, just let me know if they're about right, is I think there were 2,200 calls to 311 about basement flooding. Does that sound about right from those storms?
Speaker, that's correct. We had over 2,000 calls during those events.
For Ward 2, maybe you know, maybe you don't, is it fair to say there was about 400 calls? So very significant for West End communities.
Speaker, when we plotted the concentration, the largest concentration of impact was in your ward and surrounding your ward, but you had the largest concentration, including Councillor Nunziata's as well.
So the issues faced in Etobicoke Centre, there's many of them, but one of the prevailing themes is the reverse flow of sewage from the city's sewage system into basements. And that, of course, creates a lot of damage, and it's particularly difficult damage because of the contaminated water. Is it fair to say that, that is a type of issue that is somewhat unique to the construction type of the area, the 1950s homes, because their weeping tiles drain into the sewer leader and into the system, and when it rains really hard, the houses essentially flood the streets that they're on?
Speaker, that's correct. The way those houses were constructed is those foundation drains tie in somewhere within that house. In many cases, it's underneath the basement floor slab. So even when you put a backwater valve in, you'll stop the sewer from coming into the basement, but you will then still flood because it'll be from your weeping tile that's overloaded from the storm.
Right.
And that's something that we're looking at, and that's why we're recommending an incentive program for a home assessment to help subsidize that, so homeowners can put cameras underneath and see how their houses are plumbed so they can make better decisions on potential improvements.
So it is a difficult issue, is it fair to say, because the target performance level for our storm sewer system, when it's in a separated storm sewer system like it is in Etobicoke Centre, not like downtown where it's combined, is a 100-year storm. And for the sewer system, it's a little different performance level, but is it a 25 to 50-year storm is what it's looking to address?
Yes, Speaker. So the storm system is what we're upsizing to a 100-year storm event, because it will deal with that peak flow during that storm event. The sanitary system, we don't design to handle that peak flow, and the objective is to keep that water out of the sanitary. So it should have a more normal pattern. What we're seeing, though, is that infiltration is coming into the sanitary, and that creates a surcharge.
Yep.
So we have to find ways to separate that. Foundation drains is one source. There are potentially other sources, and our basement flooding program is designed to do that kind of work.
So to round this out, you know, this is a composite map, and I know it's hard to see on the screen, and I don't really want to go into the details, but this is a composite map of flooding in the community that I live in, Ward 2. And you have to trust me on this, but you can definitely see clusters of dots where things have happened over and over again over the years. And in fact, some of them are in areas that have received basement flooding protection project upgrades. They still got flooded. And that's because the storm surge, I think, was so high. Correct me if I'm wrong. But my question to you is, what is it that the city can do for these folks when these big storms hit, knowing that there's definitely places where there's a history showing that it's going to happen again when it rains hard? That's the key. It doesn't always rain hard.
So I am familiar with that map and other locations in the city where we have concentrated pockets of repeat flooding. Some of it is tied to the topography. It's a low bowl and everything flows into that area. In other cases, it's that surcharge. So we are working on the city's infrastructure to try to separate it as much as possible. We're going to have to work and educate homeowners that they're going to have to look at separating their home as well. So there are programs to separate your foundation drains, put in the sump pumps with backup power. That will reduce the chance of your house flooding. So it really does require a combination of both the city and the homeowner looking at their specific situation. Every home will be slightly different. There is no simple solution for each location. So it's going to take a lot of work and education. So we do need to beef up a lot more of our engagement. The things that we can do in the interim is a lot more investigation, a lot more of proactive maintenance, making sure that it's clear. And something that we've been expanding throughout the city is sensors. We started with only a few dozen. Now we got several hundred out there. And we're using these sensors to see what's happening in the sewer so we can respond.
I'm waiting for him to finish the answer. Yeah, that was your last question. It wasn't Councillor Holiday that went over 5 minutes. It was the staff that went over 5 minutes.
I get such a rare chance to talk to you, so I'm here.
All right, guys. I want to remind members
I have to wait for a big rainstorm to talk to you.
Okay, Lou, okay, you're done. Okay. I want to remind members of council, we still have 6 items. So it's 8:15. So just want to remind you, let's get this moving on. Now, Councillor Candival, you have the item down. Do you have anything to say or you don't want to say anything? Okay, good. Okay. Councillor Holiday to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. This is important. I do have a motion, and I will thank staff for all of their support and assistance in pulling together this motion, and I will explain it. What? So this motion, and you read it, this motion asks the Water Department to pay attention to the locations on maps like this, not just Ward 2. When it rains heavily...
Ward 5 too.
Ward 5, all the wards. There's records that show where there's repeat flooding. And in working with the Water Department, I know that they do this type of work, but I wanted to contain it into a motion that lets the public know that there's enhanced work. And Mr. DiGeronimo answered that at the end of his question to me, is that the Water Department just doesn't sit on their hands. Toronto Water doesn't sit on their hands when it rains. They get very busy. And they're out there trying to deal with flooding events and in some cases proactive. So this motion asks the city to be proactive in monitoring and maintaining these areas where they know there's repeat issues. This is outside of the basement flooding protection program. This is within the routine operations. I'm not asking for a new program. I'm not asking for new money. It is within the scope of work that they do, but I think it's important that we recognize this in a motion. I think if you ask Mr. DiGeronimo and the Water Department, they're supportive of this motion, and it's a recognition of what they do, and I think it's something that benefits across the city. It is the small morsel of hope that we can offer to the communities that are waiting for their basement flooding protection program upgrades, and we know in this report that they're talking about a 50-year time horizon to make it through the billions of dollars of work. And they're looking at shortening that to a 35-year time horizon. But what do you do in the time in between? Is there something that can be done? I would just like to recognize that in this motion and let people know that it's just not about waiting for years to come for construction to occur. It also lets the people know in the areas that have received basement flooding protection program upgrades that as well, if there is a pattern of continued flooding, this is something that the city can look at and address. Finally, members of council, I don't know that this report solves all of the concerns that I have regarding flooding in the community that I live in. And I can tell you, 400 311 records, we know the damage is far worse out there this summer. I've personally met with 250 people in small group meetings within the community because you just couldn't meet in a large room and go through the level of detail. It is frustrating, it is despair, it is difficult. To try to let people know that the city is doing what it can to do this, but everyone has to wait their turn in the system for these type of changes. And even when the changes are made, it is no guarantee. So the other half of the equation is what can residents do to take a defensive position within the homes that they live in? Is there work that can be done? And the positive aspect of this report is that there's some additional subsidy opportunities to make things better for people. So I do encourage council to support this report. I'm grateful for the work that is being done. And I look forward to the continued reports that are suggested in this because I believe this is a fundamental and incredibly important issue for the citizens of the city, and in particular Ward 2 Etobicoke Centre. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We do have a question for you. Councillor Perks, 3 minutes clarification.
Do you really think it's fair to ask me to understand a 161-word sentence in the 11th hour of a council meeting?
You know, Councillor Perks,
one sentence. Learn to use a period.
I'm not sure there's a question in there, Madam Speaker. I invite Councillor Perks to try hard. It's an important issue.
It's okay, it's okay. Let's move on. Councillor Chernis Lynn. Come on, let's move it along, guys.
I don't have, so I just have a motion that I would like to put forward, please. Thank you. This motion is requesting staff to include a strategy to address stormwater management in the minor variance process as part of their report back to Council in Q3 2025. And it's related to the questions I raised before. Stormwater management is a top of mind concern in my ward, particularly given our proximity to Toronto's vast ravine network. In fact, several of the neighborhoods I represent are situated within a valley or located on underground river networks. Unfortunately, flooding is not a new issue in Don Valley West. My ward also has a very high volume of minor variance applications, many of which request more hard landscaping, longer and wider buildings, and oversized basements, also known as iceberg houses. And I'm extremely happy to have learned from staff that the report that I know my predecessor requested is coming back to this council in April, specifically about iceberg houses. But cumulatively, these development trends have a significant I have heard from several residents who have experienced backyard and basement flooding as a direct result of water displacement from a new build next door. This issue is only exacerbated by the consequences of climate change, including increased rainfall. Our infrastructure simply cannot keep up, which has massive financial implications for our city. The 33 capital budget already includes a $4.5 billion investment in stormwater management. This number will continue to grow if we do not give appropriate consideration to stormwater management in minor variance process. I support the staff recommended programs to subsidize stormwater management improvements on individual properties, and I think homeowners will be pleased to see these too. However, there is clear linkage between the minor variance applications and stormwater management that should be part of the conversation, and I look forward to an update in the next staff report, and I hope folks will support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, come on, let's vote. Put the motions on the screen. Councillor Holiday's motion, it's on the screen. On favor, carried. Councillor Chernis Lynn's motion on the screen, on favor, carried. Item is amended, on favor, carried. Thank you. Next item is EX 20.13. Councillor Holiday, you held that down. Effective local governance. Councillor Holiday, do you have questions?
Speaker, no questions. I'd like to speak on the item. I have a motion.
Okay, so put your name up and you can speak.
I gotta
Okay,
find the
Councillor Holiday to speak.
I don't know if I have a copy of it, but could I ask clerks to present the motion?
Does the clerk have your motion? Okay.
Certainly. Fine. It's fine. Yeah.
I want to take all the punctuation out.
It's okay. I'm in the hands of you and the clerks. They'll be up in a second. This is not long.
Start his clock.
No, you're going to... Okay.
Okay, Councillor Holiday, the motion's on the screen.
I'll read it just to be clear. City Council requests that governance options for greater district independence, including the de-amalgamation, as part of the scope of this work. So the crux of this is to get a program advisory body to talk about all of the ways that the City of Toronto can become independent of its parent, the provincial government. Well, I'll tell you, there's many communities in this city that would like to be more independent from this body. So all I'm asking is that within the scope of the work, we look at some very difficult discussions that are very important, and they are themes that come up over and over again in conversations with the community and in community meetings, is whether or not some form of de-amalgamation is appropriate, as has happened in other cities. After many decades of something that many people would argue did not work out, and at least other governance options that puts more emphasis in decision-making at, say, the district level, such as community councils. So that's what I'm asking to include as part of this. Thank you, Speaker.
At the beginning, and now you're having a second thought.
It won't be the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker. To Council Holiday, you alluded to some with an example of the context of greater district independence. Is your intention that there is some sort of conversation about the areas in which there is value to devolve decision-making or argue policy to the 4 districts? Is that what you're getting at?
Funny, I thought we talked about that a few times at this meeting, but yes, I mean, there are absolute opportunities where I think there could be better decision-making in the districts. And we should talk about that. If we're talking about themes about decision-making on subordinate bodies, why not include that in this governance?
Thank you. Last question, and I think there's value in what you're suggesting, but there's reservation perhaps on the topic of de-amalgamation. What is your intent with the inclusion of that this this review would provide context for that, or a pathway, or? It's a program advisory body, right? It is a collection of experts. Why not bring in experts on governance and de-amalgamation stories of others? I can't possibly predict the depth or where that will go, but I think that should be part of the conversation. And it's not just my idea, it's something that has been floating around out there, and I think a lot of people would like to talk about it. We're talking about really fundamental changes to governance with respect to municipalities. And the elephant in the room in many cases has to do with the way that this city came together and the rules that were set. And perhaps after a couple of decades, since the 90s, maybe there's another conversation to be had about how to do it better. And are you suggesting that if we're seeking political autonomy from the province, there should be the ability for conversation within political autonomy within the City of Toronto? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't know how you can have one conversation without including the other. Thank you. I know it's a difficult topic, but it needs to be said. It needs to be talked about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just when you thought it was done, Speaker.
Mayor Chow, questions?
Yeah, I recalled one of my former colleagues, Doug Holliday, was the mayor of Etobicoke, and we have the mayor of York here. I know that you watch our dollar very closely.
Yes.
Have you done any kind of analysis what all of this means? Because I remember getting into a long battle against amalgamation at that time. And we said it's going to cost us a lot of money. And we were told that it would save the city, the mega city, a lot of money. It didn't turn out that way. But the amalgamation, do you estimate that it's going to save us money? It's going to cost us money? What would be the financial implications? Since you're fiscally very responsible, I wouldn't imagine that you would want to introduce a motion that would not know much of the financial implications.
Well, the financial implications of my motion right here as written are fairly minimal. It would be to include that level of expertise in the program advisory body. But I would say that the financial implications of greater independence or de-amalgamation are very serious questions, and they're on equal footing to the same questions about cost and budget and financial implications of, having a charter city in the City of Toronto, or greater independence from the province, or any of those big sliders. These are really big concepts. And I think what this motion gets at is having a more informed conversation. So, if you think there's value in taking a look at these questions, I think a lot of people have asked them. And that's the point of the motion. We're going to find out more.
And when you are talking about the amalgamation, are you looking at each city? Or right now, Toronto East York, for example, we have Toronto East York Council, Community Council, and York and Etobicoke, you have York and Etobicoke Council. So when you talk about the amalgamation, are you defining it as the way our community council is set up, or are you defining it at the 6 municipality that used to be? Like, what are you seeking?
The words of the motion are fairly tight. They don't suggest either one of those. They talk about districts and they talk about de-amalgamation. I think at this juncture, only anybody could possibly describe about what that means. But
so it could be 6, it could be 4, it could be 10?
Well, I don't know if it would be 10, but we don't know. And the point of this is whether or not we want to ask these questions as part of this process.
I see. But you're giving direction to ask them to go and seek out as options. But what precisely are you looking for?
Well, it's this report is about a program advisory body. So if we're going to embark on the work of pulling together experts to talk about these really big governance questions, let's get some experts on that group that can talk about governance matters with respect to district independence and with respect to de-amalgamation. And where that conversation goes, I don't know. But if we don't ask the questions at the outset, I don't know we'll ever get the answers.
Okay, that was your last question.
Thank you.
Councillor Bravo, 3 minutes clarification of the
Thank you,
motion.
Speaker. I'll pick up where the mayor left off. Councillor Holiday, I recall at amalgamation that the joining of municipalities wasn't just here, it was other municipalities in Ontario. And at the same time, the provincial government, under a Conservative government, downloaded social housing and social services, unlike every other province in Canada, where we are now responsible for delivering this without the provincial funding that allows us to deliver them adequately, creating the fiscal crisis we find ourselves in today. So are you suggesting that you would be willing to argue to the provincial government that they should upload social housing and social services, take back responsibility, and put us in a better financial footing? Because in the end, what it ended up doing was creating homelessness, poverty, and putting such a huge pressure on the property tax base to fund things that aren't appropriately funding out of it. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think the message I hear from a lot of people is that the amalgamation of the former municipalities into the city of Toronto didn't work out that well.
Can you answer the question about funding for social services and social housing?
Citizens are less satisfied. So
Have you heard from people that say that they're...
May I answer, Speaker?
Councillor Bravo, please allow... Councillor Bravo, please allow and clarify...
I really want to get into this.
Hold on.
So,
He's not answering the question.
Please answer the question, but clarification of the motion.
It's very specific.
But I want to have the debate. So, Speaker, the motion would allow for questions like that to be tabled much in the same way questions like, should the City of Toronto levy an income tax in order to siphon off more money to run the services that it thinks it wants that might be at different service levels from the province? Because, that's what we're talking about here. So if we're going to have all these conversations, let's include these elements.
Will you acknowledge that amalgamation had a fiscal impact that was based in the downloading of social services and social housing, which has put the city in a very precarious situation, not just this municipality, but others? Can you just acknowledge that?
Lots of impacts, fiscal ones, planning ones, people's satisfaction with government, their trust of government, the list goes on and on and on. So why not have these conversations if things aren't right?
Okay, come on, guys, let's move on. Councillor Chernis Lynn, 3 minutes, only clarification of the motion.
I know, but they want to debate.
Please, go ahead.
Well, my question wasn't about clarification. My question was not about clarification. Oh, this is not me.
Sorry, I thought Cherno's late. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and there's a motion I have with the support of Councillor Matlow to perhaps address some of the questions and themes before us, heard and perhaps unheard, that I think hopefully acknowledges the existential tensions 27 years later, that there needs to be space and place to hear voices, perspectives, narratives that help us grow into a more mature, nuanced, sensitive city. And I think that's the intention with my motion. I don't know if it's on screen, but if you can look at it, then you can see the intention behind it, which is asking for the city manager to ensure there's representation from all 4 districts of the city. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hello to speak.
You, Madam Speaker. So I'd like to encourage my colleagues to support Councillor Candavel's amendment and to vote against Councillor Holliday's amendment. What Councillor Candavel is doing is helping and contributing to ensuring that voices from across our city, from the regions, come together and discuss some of the intentions of what Councillor Holliday was talking about ensuring that every region of our city is heard and is part of this discussion about providing the best governance we can. But to start being distracted and being sidelined into other conversations about whether it be de-amalgamation or devolution, there can be discussions had, but if we talk about everything at every meeting, we're going to get nothing done. And my hope for this body that we're creating today is that citizens from our city who are passionate about Toronto can have an opportunity to work with us directly to support this city to be successful and thrive. Each one of us who come to this council chambers, I think, share a common frustration. And if we're honest with ourselves, we've all observed this. Far too many motions that are moved or recommendations adopted have to end with a request of the province to allow us to do the basic things that residents believe that cities should already do. That's what we mean by effective. We want the accountability along with the tools and the ability to be able to provide the services that Torontonians rely on. We want to be able to provide, whether it be the revenue to be able to fund those services, to have control over elections, for example, and not just find out from Doug Ford or any other premier that it's going to get ripped up in the middle of it. We want to be able to move forward with initiatives when it comes to affordability and transit without being second-guessed by a different level of government all the time. And, you know, cities throughout the world, including in the United States and Europe and Asia and beyond, have the ability to govern themselves as local governments. And again, do the things that most people assume that Toronto can. But what differentiates us uniquely as opposed to anywhere else in the world is that Canadian cities aren't even mentioned in the Canadian Constitution. We are a mere creature of the province, as they say. That's not functional. It's not effective. Now, there are residents who are going to agree with some things that the mayor and this council do. And there are other residents who are going to strongly disagree, and that's great, because that's what a healthy democracy enjoys. But I want the accountability so that if people agree with us, they can re-elect us. And if they disagree with us, they can choose other people. But at least they know who's responsible for making those decisions, who should be empowered to follow through on those decisions and implement an agenda for this city. And then in 4 years, we can have another conversation about that. That's what an election's about. That's what people want. So what's become unreliable is this dynamic where we either have a mayor and a premier who can get along or they don't. Or there happens to be an election coming up where there's a ribbon-cutting opportunity or there isn't. Or there's some sort of political opportunity for funds to exchange hands or not. That's not reliable. That's not sustainable. We never know how much money we're going to get for transit. We never know how much money we're going to get for housing. What if you have one government that wants to support us on those things and another government that doesn't? And that goes for the federal government as well. So one of the ideas that we'd like to discuss is a city charter, where there's a single province amendment, and I'm not pretending that Doug Ford is going to support it, but maybe another premier one day will, where if the province and the federal government agree, then those tools can be provided to big cities in Canada. Where big cities like Chicago and LA and New York and across the states that actually get to make all these decisions themselves, we might be able to have even a few of those tools so that we're able to actually deliver for our residents. So what I ask you for is an opportunity. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be quick. Something that I'd really appreciate doing while I'm a member of this council is having serious conversations with people who want to take this seriously and really work on empowering our city to do really good work and have the tools and the powers and the accountability.
5
to do
seconds.
So, with all due respect to Councillor Holyday, let's not get distracted. Let's actually allow this committee to do the work that we want them to do and do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Chow to speak.
I want to thank Councillor Matlow and Councillor Myers for bringing this charter city concept to us right here and establishing an advisory body so that we can begin the work and the conversation. Through the years, there's an enormous desire of Torontonians that said, we want to contribute to the well-being of this city. We want to contribute in making the city a better place for everyone. We want to assist. We want to be part of the conversation because we love this city. We care about this city. And often there's a bit of frustration because they want the city government to be as successful as possible, but they also understand our financial constraint and the way we are governed. And it's not the most effective way. It's very, very old. It is so old that it is, I think back in those days, we were rural Canada, like a tiny, tiny place. Yeah, we were farmers. And we absolutely have to modernize ourselves. If not, we're going to be left behind. And often I consider, because as the mayor, I travel across the city, and people are awfully proud to be Torontonians. And you can see them coming out in the summer when we have the festivals, the taste of everything everywhere. They just love our city. And we are the global beacon of hope. I tell you, these new immigrants that come, newcomers, they just love us. They can't get over how diverse and how welcoming a city and how peaceful and supportive we are of each other. So in many ways, this is a long overdue conversation. And we're opening it up to say, come, give us ideas. And we've seen many cycles. We've seen unleash the power of the municipality cycle that started by the Federation of Canadian Municipality. We saw the John Hondrick 1 cent solution that came close to getting 1 cent of the GST. And here we are. Let's try again. Let's have a conversation again. Let's look at all the alternatives. So Councillor Canada's motion is very helpful. This is the representative in 4th District. But Councillor Holiday's motion, at first I thought, gee, okay, I fought hard against amalgamation because I believe in local democracy at that time with 100 councillors. And that when everything got amalgamated, it means that people have less voice. And it got worse when this council got chopped in half. Okay? But this motion has no, it's poorly thought out. Is it 4 districts that we are using right now? Or is it 6 cities? We don't know. Are we looking at when we de-amalgamate, how much will it cost? What does it look like? We don't know. It is not in a way that would be conducive to a good conversation, because you need to do some research first before you suggest something. The Charter City folks have done phenomenal amount of research, and they have a huge number of people backing them. This is not a fly-by-night, at the last minute, 8:43, just something that can't even tell me, is it 6 former cities? Is it 4 districts? Basic information. You can't answer that question. So it's not worthy of support, especially at a time when we are talking about buy local, buy Toronto. Deputy Mayor Cole is going to do a round of interviews talking about how important it is for us to be united as a city of Toronto, as a city that we would all come together and buy local. As we are talking about unity, we are looking at fragmentation. By gosh, that is the exact opposite direction at this time. Okay? If you're interested, do the research first, then we can talk more about it. Thank you again to the councillors for bringing this charter city concept to us.
Thank you. Next up is Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Through you, Speaker, I just want to add my voice to this. First, by thanking Councillor Candeville for his motion. I think it's good that we have representation from all four corners of our city, or all four community council districts. And second, I just want to address Councillor Holiday's motion. While I understand the sentiment behind it, I just don't think Councillor Holiday has thought through just how wildly inefficient and expensive this would be. To have all these municipal servants to have to be fired and then start new jobs at whatever city that these Scarborough, Toronto, East York, Etobicoke would just be so incredibly expensive and inefficient. I'm actually surprised Councillor Holiday would do something like this, because usually he's criticizing others for this. So I'm a bit shocked. Maybe because it's late at night. It's okay. It's okay. I would just like to say, I think
Please stop interrupting, Councillor Holiday.
The moment is now for Toronto to have this debate. Toronto residents are hungry for a new deal. They are hungry to start charting our own course. Whenever I talk to residents, they say, well, why does insert city X get this and we don't get that? And I'm like, we don't have the power to do this. We don't, and it sounds like, it's like a cop-out, but actually we don't have the power. We don't have the power to force commercial tenants to fill up spaces that have been vacant for years. We don't have the power to tell people who've had development applications on the book for years that, you either use it or you lose it. We don't have these powers. And we end up in this cycle where we're just kind of reacting to whatever comes down from Queen's Park, and we can't really plan and think through the type of city that we want to be. We've had a lot of interesting debates today, a lot of good ideas, but I can't count the number of times that's contingent on asking the province for permission. We can't run a city like this. We are a city that is larger than most provinces. Our economy is one of the most dynamic out of any city in the world. We attract talent. We are competitive. Toronto is a brand, and it's a good brand. And I think we finally are at the point where, whether the province is ready or not, we're ready. And that's what matters. We're ready to have that conversation, and we're ready to start moving forward and charting that course of what does Toronto look like, what's it going to be, and who are we? And, I'm really excited that we all as a council are taking this important step, because I think this is a big step. And I think we're eventually going to get to where we all want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Perruzza.
Great idea, like absolutely great idea. Probably hardest thing to do, under our current rules here in Ontario. Why? Easy enough. Every premier elected to govern Ontario comes to understand a fundamental thing, that how Toronto goes, so too goes the province, so too goes the country. They all get that. Doesn't matter where they come from, whether they come from the city of Toronto, whether they come from Wawa or beyond. Even Mike Harris understood that. Right? All the way from North PA. Right? But then what do? They proceed to begin to beat up on Toronto. Why? It's simple math. Right? You you form a majority government in Ontario with, I don't know, 65, 70 members or something like that. You, as a governing party, probably elect 6, 7, 8 in Toronto, if you're the Conservatives, right? A few more maybe if you're the Liberals, maybe a few more if it's going to be an NDP government. And depending on the members you elect from the City of Toronto, they bring a voice, and they in caucus and in cabinet and so on. And how often do those voices get shut down? Now, simply, the minute a Toronto member whines about underfunding or an issue, you'll have a Northern member stand up and talk about how in Toronto you got running water. Where I come from, you got outhouses. What do you say to that? You know how you form a government in the province of Ontario, and Councillor Coley will tell you this. You run against the City of Toronto. That's how you elect 60 members and form the government. Whether you're from Eastern Ontario, Western Ontario, Southern Ontario, Northern Ontario, Mid-Ontario, you run against Toronto. Those Toronto people, it's all them, it's all them. We got nothing. Right? That's how you do it. So the Premier comes to office and says, oh my God, now what do I do? All right? Well, Premier Ford, it's easy. What do you do in Toronto? You beat it up. You go after its bike lanes. You go after its safe injection sites. You go after the bus stop so that in Wawa you say, you see, I'm beating up on Toronto. I'm doing exactly what you want me to do. Beating up on them. That hurts us, no question about that. And I don't know how you get around that. I really don't know how you get around that. But it's true that keeping us tied to a formula that keeps us perpetually poor, property taxes, a share of property tax, a portion of it, not all the property tax, not all the residential, 50% of commercial industrial, more or less, right? The rest of it they get. Right? A share of property tax in an ever-shrinking pool of properties contributing. Fees and fines don't fund the city. Impossible. Because you cobble all that together, you don't even get to 50% of your budget. Even 50%. So forget the services, the luxury services that Councillor Holyday might do away with. Even if you did away all of those, you still wouldn't be able to manage it. They keep us perpetually poor, tethered to them. That's the formula. And yes, they squeeze you on one end, so they force you to punish your residents unfairly through inflated, higher, unfair property taxes, higher fees and fines, right? Just so that they can do what it is that they decide to do everywhere else. They're not your friend. They'll never be your friend, not under the current rules.
They not like that?
Yeah, well, we didn't like you much, none neither. I get that too. I remember the Rocky
Carroll,
line, right?
we're not trying to delay the agenda.
She's absolutely.
Don't provoke him.
You know what? I'll end it there. That's fine. Fair enough.
Okay.
That was fair.
Thank you. Okay, it's getting very late, and I think we're tired. So, Councillor Carroll. Come on.
I apologize, Madam Speaker, for making a Kendrick Lamar joke, but it's kind of his week. Madam Speaker, I have good news. We finally came up with a committee. I don't want to be on it. I don't want to chair it. Have at her. So all you guys, sorry, Madam Mayor, find somebody else in this room. Don't need to be there. Councillor Prutza took us on a very long walk, but he got to autonomy in the end. And he got to that relationship. We are just on the precipice of properly developing a really grown-up relationship with all the other municipalities in this province and certainly the provincial government by what we just did just a few short months ago. We're rejoining AMO. We're having those big conversations about local governance by joining that. And we can have a conversation about what would be the meaning of autonomy for the City of Toronto. But what saddens me, all kidding aside, Madam Speaker, is that is actually a very big conversation. But we're now going to tangentially talk about going back in time. And it kind of cheapens the whole idea of what does autonomy mean? Do you want to just relate it to the long-term financial plan? Do you want to go deeper? But you're not going to get it by going back in time. You know, if you want to go back to 1998, I still had a TV that was about 4 feet wide and about 3 feet deep, and I could rest stuff on top of it. I had a lamp and place to store my books, and I loved that TV. I wish we could go back in time. So I had a TV that took up my entire living room. That's how long ago that was. And it worked for then. But we're in a different world now. I had a Palm Pilot. I could keep my schedule on this separate thing. And I had a flip phone over here that didn't have email on it. I waited till I got home and then looked at my email on my desktop, which was upstairs on the second floor away from my kids. That was a life. And it worked for the tiny town of North York, where we really didn't have a lot of the needs that we're now dealing with as city councillors who have regard and passion for every challenge we face in every corner of this city, and we all go out of our way to understand deeply what's going on in every corner of this city so that we can all help with it. And if we want to figure out a way how autonomy, financially or governance or otherwise, can affect that, I want to hear what this committee comes up with. But if this committee is the go back in time committee, shoulda, coulda, woulda, I got too much on my plate, and you guys have fun. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote on the motion. I remember the typewriter too. Didn't have a computer, I had a typewriter. Motion 1 by Councillor Holiday. Recorded vote.
Councillor Burnside, are you present in the meeting? Thank you.
My apologies.
Councillor Fletcher, your vote, please. The motion does not carry. The vote is 1-19.
Our next item is PH 18.3. Councillor Perks, you... Oh, on the item, on favor? No, hold on. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Candeval had a motion. Okay, on Councillor Candeval's motion, on favor, carried. Item is amended. On the item is amended? Yes, I heard that. Item is amended. Recorded vote.
Just stand by, members, while we stage the vote. Mayor Chow, please. Councillor Perruzza, please, and Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher. The item is amended, carries. The vote is 18-2.
Our next item is PH 18.3. Councillor Perks, you held the item down. Recommended parking requirements for new development. Councillor Perks, do you have questions to staff? Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Perks, would you like to speak? Oh, where's Councillor Cheng? Councillor Cheng, you have questions? Councillor Cheng, questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick question here. Just wanted a clarification of item 11, which I'm grateful is included in this motion, to identify areas where the amount of visitor parking provided in new development is inadequate. What is the definition of inadequate that will be used to define those areas?
Through the Speaker, we have been doing some monitoring related to visitor parking over the last while, and we'll look at the results of that and continue to do some further analysis about what we're seeing in different parts of the city based on factors like what other parking might be available, if in public parking, what is the availability of transit, factors like that. But we'll also be looking for input from local councillors and from there's a requirement that we be out in consultation with the public as well, so we'll be looking for input into that definition and to the approach to determine a new rate.
So this motion will result in a pathway with consultation towards potential minimum requirements in new developments.
So we have been asked to look at what the rates are and where there are areas of the city that are experiencing particular challenges, and then to come forward with recommendations on ways to address the requirements. So there may be some adjustments to the formula to address minimum parking in certain parts of the city based on the analysis.
So I guess, the challenge is that the challenges are not necessarily going to be apparent right now. And a lot of the applications with very low visitor parking may not even be built for another 5, 10, 15 years. So when you say challenges, you're just talking about maybe what councillors are describing as potential challenges based on the numbers of the application and not the impact, because that impact in many cases won't have happened yet.
Through the Speaker, the analysis that we did about visitor parking showed that rates of visitor parking had been declining prior to the elimination of the minimum parking standards that the city did in the zoning bylaw. And then it's kind of leveled out. So we will be able to look at some situations where there are existing buildings now, buildings that have been constructed where there are lower levels of visitor parking, and understand how they are functioning. But you're right, some of this will also need to be an assessment of what we see in terms of applications where there are permissions but not necessarily buildings built, and we'll have to do an assessment of those situations as well, based on some of the factors that I outlined.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that we're, capturing those situations where they're not built yet. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Perks, you have questions?
Yes, and this is just to clear up a little matter. I think somebody misspoke. This motion does not reintroduce the notion of minimum parking, but rather a consideration of minimum visitor parking. Correct?
You are correct, Councillor, yes.
Thank you.
So do we have anyone that wants to speak? Okay, on the item? Huh?
I have a motion. I want to speak.
Councillor Perks, you held the item down. Do you want to speak first? Okay, Councillor Cheng, what is your motion?
Thank you so much. So this is my motion. It's a two-part motion. this is to look at the feasibility of including the number of visitor parking spots available in the purchase agreement, because I want to bring visibility to this. People, when they're buying a unit, they won't necessarily look at how many visitor parking is available, but I think that buyers should be aware of what they're going to buy, because we can predict the many challenges when there is insufficient visitor parking. And there's another part of my amendment. Can I see that one on the screen? And this is with regard to the notices that go up when there's a new application coming, and that visitor parking spaces proposed for the development is included in the notice that's posted. And this has these amendments were worked on with staff, and they are in agreement with both of these edits. Thank you. Those are my motions.
Councillor Perks to speak. Councillor Perks.
Yeah, Councillor Cheng's motions are okay.
Okay, on Councillor Cheng's motion. Okay, Councillor Candavel now has a question to Councillor Cheng. He has a question to Councillor Cheng. Okay, Councillor Candavel, we were just going to vote on it.
The software wasn't allowing me to request to speak to a question of clarification to Councillor Cheng. To clarify, what you're looking to do here is to include language within the purchase and sale agreements. What are you hoping to achieve this will, what are you hoping that this will achieve to impact sufficient parking?
Well, it's more to bring visibility, because we know that our developer friends are market driven. And so buyers, when they buy and they have a agreement, will then see what the numbers are. So it's just to bring visibility, because this is something that I think many people might accidentally overlook when you're making such a huge decision about buying a new home.
Exactly. And is this coming out of your experience that there is a lack of information and knowledge about our parking minimums, whether it's residential or visitor? Is that the space you're coming from?
I think it's more of, I don't think that buyers, when they're buying new homes, think about visitor parking. You're thinking about so many things within your unit, the square footage, maybe the maintenance fees, but probably you're not thinking about this piece. But then one day you may need a PSW. You may have a visiting boyfriend or girlfriend that needs to have a parking spot, or contractors that are needing to do renovations in your unit, and then you find out there's insufficient visitor parking, but by then it's too late. So by including it in the agreement, it just brings to visibility, and hopefully that, creates an awareness that maybe puts some pressure on developers to be more generous with their provision of visitor parking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Holiday, clarification of the motion?
I'm hoping I can be helpful. Councillor Cheng, I realize it's a long agenda, but could I invite you to open up EY 19.1? We voted on it already, and you'll see this exact motion there.
So I was actually inspired by your motion, your history of motions, and thinking that, I know that you add it case by case, but including it as a requirement would mean you wouldn't need to add it as an amendment in the future.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, to avoid making a 5-minute speech later, I'm going to ask questions just to clarify for other councillors. Councillor Chang, you and I have worked on this because we're both in higher order transit corridors. The parking minimums overall, we don't have a big issue with. You can go down. We're surrounded by transit stations and great connections, but once you do that, it's that visitor element that we can't reduce too far. That's the targeted review we're looking for here. Am I right?
You are spot on, and that is the concern that I have. Inadequate visitor parking.
Right. And so all we're saying is until we do resolve this issue and we start to change that trend on the visitor parking, you just want kind of similar to the bylaw that has existed for a long time that we tell people in the purchase and sale, oh, by the way, there's no school here. It's, oh, by the way, there's only 19 visitor parking spaces here, just so you know. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
In my case, sometimes it's just 7 for 500 people, 500 units.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's put Councillor Cheng's motion on the screen and let's vote. Motion 1A by Councillor Cheng. On favor? Carried. Next motion, 1B by Councillor Cheng. On favor? Carried. Item is amended. On favor? Carried. Okay, Councillor Perks, the next one is yours, PH 16.6. Progress on building more supportive homes. Does anybody have any questions? No. Oh, Councillor Holliday, you want to speak, right? Do you have questions or you want to speak? Yes. Okay, because you're under speaking.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, just so you know, the system is tired like many of us, and
I know, because we're all getting tired.
Yep. So I wanted to understand recommendation number 4 asks staff to inform local councillors of plans to purchase or develop properties using the Affordable Housing Fund Rapid Housing Substream funding in advance of any address being publicly announced, and to work with local councillors on communication and community engagement. What does community engagement mean?
Speaker, we have been working over the last number of years. We have a long track record of doing engagement and information sharing with community about new supportive housing. So this means we have staff teams, we organize public meetings, information sessions. The focus of the engagement is on the buildings themselves. So the feedback that we ask for is about the concept of the building, the location, all of the things that our development review and planning staff would be interested in feedback on.
So feedback is not solicited on the decision to acquire the property?
Speaker, yes, that's correct.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the mechanism in which a local councillor is provided information about a process that I think is delegated to staff? Is that correct?
Speaker, yes, there is some council-approved criteria that we use to determine good locations, either for purchase or the development of city land as it relates to supportive housing, that looks at is existing zoning, proximity to transit, etc., size, all of those kind of aspects.
So do you have an operating procedure that guides when you tell a councillor during the process?
Speaker, as we said, we normally engage with councillors if we're able to secure money financing to make the project real and get it going.
I got to be really precise on this. When you contact a councillor and disclose that there's a property, a subject property, is that before or after the commitment is made for the purchase?
Speaker, it's definitely part of the process, but the decision to complete on a project, to close on a building or complete a transaction, it is not something we're kind of going to the local councillor to ask for their consent or approval of.
So, Speaker, respectfully, I want to get a precise answer at what point in time. And I appreciate the comments, but I just want to know if it's before or after that happens.
Through the Speaker, we may, depending on the site and location, inform a local councillor that we're looking at it. But usually, in many cases, we will inform them after the decision has been made to purchase the building or move forward on the development.
So if I understand it, it's on both sides of that point in time. So if you inform a local councillor, is it inform or is it to solicit feedback? And is there any utility in doing so before the transaction? Why? Why would you do one before and one after?
Speaker, the local councillor has often, as you're aware, has lots of really great information about their community and good connections in community. But similarly with our engagement with the public, we're often not asking for permission to actually undertake the transaction, but to get feedback that will help to make the project successful and make it go well.
So you're soliciting feedback about the project, but is there any rationale then as to whether or not a councillor is informed before or after the point of sale?
To the Speaker, it may be, for example, that the site has history that the councillor has information about. So it really depends on a site-by-site basis about whether the councillor has been involved in that site in some way before. I can't really comment without a specific.
But to be clear, you're soliciting feedback on the site before completing the sale.
In some cases, we may do that, okay. But we also have that delegation from council to be able to move forward without further council approval.
Okay, that was your last question. So we're on the speakers list. Oh, you do have questions. Okay, Councillor Perks, question.
Thank you. Thank you. Many, if not most people, excuse me, Councillor Candeval, where's the staff? Oh, you're over there? Okay. Yes. Many, if not most people who would be eligible for supportive housing would belong to a group of people who are protected in human rights legislation. Is that correct?
To the Speaker, yes.
Okay, thank you. When the city is looking to acquire a property, if that property address is made public, we're at risk of having the value of the property bid up once the city, which has very deep pockets, shows an interest in our property. Is that a reasonable assumption to make?
To the Speaker, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, we'll go to speakers now. Councillor Perks, you want to speak last? Okay, Councillor Holiday to speak. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. Is that the clerk's putting my recommendation up? So I'm suggesting a change to recommendation number 4. And the simple change is that the staff develop an option to purchase a property and then go and consult the community. And I think this is fundamentally important. I know that we've had this conversation in the council chamber before, but it's about having an opportunity to consult with the community about before making a financial transaction or a commitment. And there will be other councillors that have clear opposition to this concept. We've had this debate before in the council chamber, but I'd still like to put it before you because I believe that there are ways that this can be done should council wish to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perks to speak.
Other speakers?
No, I don't see any other speakers.
Okay, thank you. You know, members, there are certain kinds of debates where I have to mentally count to 10 before I say anything, because they just make me so angry. And this is one of them. Councillor Holyday is very deliberately trying to set up a circumstance where if people who belong to a group whose rights are protected in human rights legislation try to move into his ward, he can stop it. That's what he's doing. Make no mistake about that. Councillor Holyday is asking you to join him on a path that leads to us violating human rights. I cannot tell you what a horrible idea that is. Not just you acting in your capacity as members of a government, but also you as human beings. He is asking you to vote to violate human rights. I can't believe that this happens in this chamber, but from time to time, members like Councillor Holyday try it. He is also asking you to put the city's finances at risk. Because once it becomes public that the City of Toronto is interested in a property but has not concluded the transaction, the price of that property will go up. Mr. Matuzo just said so. He is willing to burn public dollars, burn them for no purpose other than his chance to make sure that people who are more vulnerable and have had a harder life than him cannot move into his neighborhood. I'm amazed that he has the gall to do it.
I knew. Councillor Holyday, point of privilege.
Madam Speaker. So much in the same manner that I was scolded this morning for offering an opinion on the motivations of a motion, it is completely inappropriate for Councillor Perks to suppose why I moved anything. And I'd like him to withdraw those comments.
Councillor Perks.
Speaker, I did not suppose that the councillor had a motivation. What I did instead was to get the general manager of the Affordable Housing Office to say out loud before Councillor Holyday moved his motion that most people who would qualify for this form of housing would belong to a group protected in human rights legislation, and then he made the decision with that information publicly available to move his motion anyway. I don't need to speak to his motives. It's a matter of record that that was in front of him before he moved his motion.
Yeah, but Councillor Perks, you indicated that the reason that Councillor Holyday has moved that motion that he doesn't want housing in his ward. So if you can retract that.
Okay, you're quite right. You're quite right. What I should have said is Councillor Holyday is more than happy to set up a circumstance where people whose rights we would be violating cannot move into parts of this city. That's what I should have said. You're quite right.
Can you apologize?
I apologize for not having said clearly that what Councillor Holyday was doing was setting up a circumstance where people whose rights are protected in law cannot move into parts of the city.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So let's put Councillor Holyday's motion on the screen. We'll vote on it. Okay, Councillor Holyday's motion, recorded vote.
Councillor Mantis, are you able to vote, please? Councillor Morley, how do you vote, please? In the negative, thank you. How do you vote, sir? In the negative, thank you. The motion does not carry. The vote is 4-14.
Next item is PH 18.13. Councillor Perks, you held the item down. Oh, sorry. Item is amended. All in favor? All in favor? There was no amendment. All in favor of the item? Recorded. Sorry, I apologize to staff. I'm trying to get through this agenda.
Councillor Matlow, please. Councillor Morley, how do you vote, please? In the affirmative, thank you. The item is adopted. The vote 17-1.
Okay, our next item is PH 18.3. Councillor Perks, you held the item down, community benefits. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, on the item, on favor, carried. Okay, we're at the last item now, MM 2611. Let's amplify the need for a new fiscal framework. Councillor Holyday, you held the item down. Do you have questions? Pardon?
No.
No? Does anybody have any question? Councillor Holyday, do you want to speak? You held the item down.
Recorded vote.
Pardon?
Sorry,
Okay, recorded vote.
Madam Speaker.
Recorded vote on MM 26.11, which is the last item. Let's amplify the need for a new fiscal framework. Okay. On the item, recorded vote.
Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks, are you voting? Councillor Morley, how do you vote, please? In the affirmative, thank you. The item is adopted. The vote is 17-1.
Members, before I ask for a motion to enact the general bills, may I have a motion regarding the consideration of submissions on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments? Councillor Perks, would you like to move that?
Speaker, I haven't been happier to do something at council in years. I move that the committee and council consider submissions in making a decision on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments.
Okay, can I have members of council, please take your seats. We're not finished yet. Please, I need quorum. We need to approve the bills. On favor, carried. May I have a motion to introduce the general bills? Moved by Mayor Chow.
That leave be granted to introduce Bill 38 to 99.
Shall leave be granted to introduce these bills? On favor, show of hands, carried. Shall these bills be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act? On favor, 2006, on favor, carried. May I have a motion to introduce the confirmatory bills? Mayor Chow.
Of this motion, the proceeding of the City Council meeting 26 on February 5th, 2025.
Shall leave be granted Shall leave be granted to introduce these bills? All in favor? Carried. Shall these bills be declared as bylaws? I don't even have quorum in the council chambers, guys. Okay. Shall these bills be declared as bylaws and be passed subject to Section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006? All in favor? Carried. Thank you to staff. Thank you to members of council. This meeting is now adjourned.